Meditations with Ryan Zlomek.
Boo. Did I scare you? Well, I hope not, because this is supposed to be a welcoming auditory environment. Welcome to the Meditations Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Zlomek, and this is a show all about making space for conversations with interesting people just to see what we can learn from them. And I am over the moon because today we're going to transport from where I am in Syracuse, New York, all the way to the great state of New Jersey, Bud Lake to be more specific, to take a trip again back to the 1990s. If you are ever somebody who remembers Scholastic book fairs or went to a bookstore and saw all these colorful Goosebumps covers, this is an episode for you. And if you're just somebody who's interested in learning about commercial art and understanding creative procedures, well, you are in for a treat. On today's show, I have Tim Jacobus. Tim is the illustrator most known for doing the covers of not one, not two, not three, not four, but 62 different Goosebumps covers in the 90s for the first run of the Goosebumps books. And if you're unfamiliar with Goosebumps, it was an amazing anthology series of horror stories written by R.L. Stine that captured the imaginations of so many people and inspired an entire generation of creatives to just think a little kooky and spooky. So without further ado, let's go learn from Tim, shall we? Here he is, Tim Jacobus. Tim, thanks so much for joining the show. I'm somebody who takes a lot of pride in where I'm from, and one of the things that I found kind of interesting about you is that you are born and raised and proud to be from New Jersey, and I'm curious about your sort of upbringing and your inherent New Jersey pride.
Yeah, I've moved a handful of times in my life, but it's all been within a 20-mile radius. Um, my parents were from New Jersey. My upbringing was classic late baby boomer upbringing, where my dad was in World War II, and when he got out, part of the GI Bill was they gave them an opportunity to buy a home. My father paid $10,000 for his first home, and it was a one-story home, no basement, a slab foundation, and then there were the kitchen, the living room, and what you would call bedrooms, and one bathroom. And then there was a set of stairs that went to nowhere. And if you would like to build the second floor, it's on you. So these were very baseline houses, and they just planted these giant neighborhoods all throughout where we grew up. So that was, everybody was doing the same thing. So my neighborhood had tons of kids, and tons of kids my age, which, my son is 25, and the opportunity to have so many friends was great, because you can get in an argument with the guy down the street and not want to hang out with him, and then you got 8 other choices to make the next day. So you weren't pinned down to, well, you're my only friend and this is the way it's going to be. Life was lived on a bicycle, and we also lived at a lake community. So the old school mom would throw us out in the summer, would throw us out in the morning and say, don't come back until lunch. You could come back for lunch, and then we get kicked out again, and don't come back until dinner, and then get kicked out again, and don't come back till the street lights come on. A great location where we grew up. And I still have a lot of the friends that I grew up with. The guy who was my next door neighbor, I'm still close friends with. His birthday is in 2 weeks, and I'll go see him. And it's having friends and growing up that way is you don't realize it at the time. Everybody seems like a pain in the butt when you're a kid back then. But we had a real charmed existence.
Oh, I love it. And was it is it Denville, New Jersey? Was that
Yeah,
your
Denville even sounds like a good place, right?
It doesn't it? It's great. I was doing a little bit of research on it and it was fun seeing that like what was it? There was one Sopranos episode that I think took place there and there,
Yes, yes,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
uh,
No,
uh
that's good. That's good.
yeah, so we've got Tim Jacobus and the Sopranos, in one town.
Hey,
What more
forget
do you need?
about it.
Absolutely. So you said your dad was in World War II. What did your parents do? What were their professions?
My father, when he got out of the war, he started working at a pharmaceutical place. I forget which company, and he washed bottles because he saw that he could get a job, and he stayed in pharmaceuticals, and he was a pharmaceutical manufacturer. He made he got the raw materials and made the medicine. The chemistry, and mostly it was the forming of tablets. He got very good at what he did. And later in his career, he traveled internationally from time to time to go open new plants and get them up and running in the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and yeah, he liked his work. And my mom was most of our life, she was just mom. She was a stay-at-home mom. And a little bit later on, she did some secretarial work before we were all born. And then after we all were, in high school and doing our own thing, and she didn't need to be home all the time, she went to the local hospital and did more clerical work.
That's awesome. I like because one of the things I'm curious about is it seems like you made the decision to become a commercial artist pretty early on. Some people kind of discover that, and I was curious when that sort of artistic
So,
component
if,
hit you.
yeah, it, it, so my dad could draw, and but we never talked about art as a career. Like my father grew up very, very poor, and then he always looked at his job and working for somebody. That was a good goal. Then he wanted us all to get a college education. Of course, that was real big in his eyes, and everybody else at the time. Uh, but the idea of art as a career, didn't float around the house. It never reached that level. Um, my dad used his ability to draw as a descriptive tool. I use the example where he'd go, "Oh, I'm thinking about building a deck on the back of the house, and it's going to look like this." And he would take a napkin and flip it over, and he could quickly draw something that look quite look good enough to go, "Oh yeah, that I can see where this thing's gonna go." So I adopted that idea that drawing is more of a communications tool. It's fun to do, but it's mostly you're coming up with ideas to convey a message. So I remember making posters as a kid, and for the Yankees or the Giants, and things along those lines. It really wasn't until I was a senior in high school before the idea of commercial art and art as a career really hit. I was a senior. I had enough credits. The way the school worked was you had to accumulate 100 credits. You accumulate 100 credits, you graduate. And if you're a decent enough student, I wasn't a student. I wasn't a bad student. I was a C plus B minus guy. Right down the middle. But I had accumulated enough points my senior year where I didn't need to go to school for the full day. They gave you the opportunity to do a half a day, and the other half a day you could go get a job. You could do anything you wanted, but you had that option. And my dad was like, "Look, you're still playing ball, so I don't want you to come home and hang out and do nothing. So I don't care what you do. Pick a class, fill up the day." He goes, "I don't care if you take basket weaving. You don't have to take chemistry or calculus or something you don't want to do, but just fill up the day. I just feel better about that. So I went into my guidance counselor and I go, yeah, I got to fill the day. What do we have here? And we went through the stuff and he goes, well, what do you like? And I go, well, I really like to draw and do art. And he goes, yeah, but you did all those. You did what we offer here. He goes, but it's funny. I just got this thing from the vocational school in the next town, and they're offering a commercial art class, and it's for a half a day. Like we put you on you'd come to school, we put you back on the bus again, you'd go to the other school, you'd stay there, do your thing, and come back at lunch to our school and finish out your day. And that's all both of us knew. And I went, I'm in. Sure, any kind of art, I don't care. And when I got over to this vocational school, it was the light goes on, and you go, oh my God, this is it. This is the thing. Didn't know anything about the art business, and they taught us everything: typesetting and how to get art ready for a camera. They had some tools that we could use. We did some photography work, and it was just an all around hands-on preparation for commercial art. And like I said earlier, my dad really wanted all of us to get our degrees. And I had, at the time, had already agreed to go to one of the colleges in New Jersey. And I was accepted, and we were all set. And then after I started taking this course, I started to bleed out of that idea of going just to college. I either want to go to an art college or just to an art school. And ended up, so when I graduated, I took a year off before I went to college. And I did it for two reasons. One is because I really wasn't ready. And I also wanted to watch the other guys that I knew were all going to different art schools, all different kinds. There was, go to college and do art on the side. There was a real nice art school in New York City that one of my friends was going to. And then there was this other art school in South Jersey and again, all of them had varying things. One, you would get a degree. The other two were more like trade school oriented. You would get a lot of hours and you'd learn how to draw, but you're not coming out with that tangible piece of paper. I took the year off, and me and my friend Bobby, we hitchhiked around the United States for 3 months. And then when we got back, then I got myself a job for a while and built up some funds, and then decided I wanted to go to this art school. And yeah, my dad wasn't thrilled. He really would have preferred that I just went to regular college, because again, art as a business, boy, that's risky. We don't know anybody in that business. And but I was a knucklehead of a kid, and they just figured, all right, what are we going to do? Just let them go. And that's really where it all, once I hit art school, then it was game on. You're exposed to all the other people doing the same thing, and it really started the thing to roll.
And this was this Spectrum Institute for Advertising Art?
Yes, this was Spectrum Institute, very tiny school. We were downstairs to a doctor's office, 20 of us in the graduating class. I don't know how many students in the whole school, but not many. But awesome teachers. Part of the curriculum was part of the agreement they had with the instructors was they all had to be, have a real career, be working artists. And what was great is not only would they give us our lessons and we'd be working on our school projects, they would also bring in projects that they were working on in real life, and we would see things that they were doing, they would discuss problems they were having with clients. So it was truly hands-on. And a lot of our instructors were, these were real top tier people. And you don't realize it at the time. You just go, wow, they seem pretty good. And then as you stay there longer and you go, oh, this guy's been at this a long time. He's got some real clout and he's won some serious awards. And and what was nice is all the instructors came from different disciplines. I taught for a little while at the when I was in my late 20s at the Joe Kubert Art School. And that's comic books. That's 100% comic books. That's what they do. And so there's no, like, you have to show up and be sure that's what you want to do. Where the art school I went to, everybody kind of just, developed, and everybody kind of went off and did their own thing. Some people did the illustration route. Some people were more designers. One guy it opened up an incredible sign painting company. Other people went into the just pure art direction end of things and make television commercials and go the huge route. So yeah, it's very interesting, the deviation of what came from those people.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think that like oftentimes the term commercial art has like a, I don't know, you want to wash it off yourself or something. And I don't prescribe to that at all. I mean, some of my favorite, as I'm sitting in this room that's surrounded by commercial art posters, it's just like it's some of my favorite stuff is just seeing how people communicate ideas for something that should be boring or should not, shouldn't be that interesting. I know that like when you left there, you ended up taking jobs where you were doing paintings for grocery stores and stuff like that. When you were in college, though, what was there anything that really spoke to you or any type of that, within that commercial art realm that you were really kind of hoping to get into?
I knew I wanted to be an illustrator, but I didn't quite know how that was all going to play out. The thing I was exposed to the most from the time I was 14, 15 until the time I'm now in art school at the age of 18 was I loved, all of us, you have a love for music, and albums were that was the driving means to listen to music, and album covers where all the cool illustrators were. And, you sit there on your couch listening to music, you go, yeah, I want to do that. So when I went to art school, that's what I thought, that's what I had in my head. I'm going to do album covers. And then when you get there, and not that album covers were a bad thing, it's just there's lots of other things that happen way more often than albums. Even a good band isn't going to put anything out more than once every 2 or 3 years. So I had an instructor in my third year of Spectrum Institute who was a book illustrator. And I just, I latched onto the guy like a barnacle. And he was super nice to me, gave me tons of pointers, and, just kind of steered me in that direction. And that's so that idea of being a book illustrator came on quick and early. And what was great was I was just ignorant enough to think that, if you look into all this stuff and if you look too close, you would scare yourself out of it. And of course, I wasn't that smart. So I was just going, yeah. And I'm going to, there's people who kind of work their way towards that goal. So you get out of art school and, maybe you go to a small company and you learn the ropes there. Then you become the art director and you learn some more ropes there. And then maybe you get to start to illustrate a little after that when you're in. And then I'm skipping all those steps. I'm just getting out of school and going right there. And that was a much tougher route, but it was way more direct. And you get smacked around a little bit more that way, but you learn quick what you have to do and what needs to be done. And yeah, and it just there was, so at this stage in my life, you look back a lot and you go, man, there were so many things that fell into place, or so many things that just had to go exactly right. And you didn't know it at the time. You just, believe me, I didn't make it because I was this incredibly massive talent and everybody was like, oh, look what he's doing. I was never that guy. I wasn't that guy in high school art classes. I wasn't that guy at my art school. I was always pretty good. I was recognizable, but there was always two more guys, above me that were just doing it better. And I'm sure you've noticed it you see it everywhere, and it happens in sports, it happens in art, it happens in music, it happens in just real life where there are people that are born gifted. They just have it. And it doesn't matter what thing that they're participating in, but they're a natural. And I was never the natural. Mine was the grind. It's like, yeah, I know what I want to do, and I can see it here, but it's not coming out on this end, and I need it to get all the way down and onto the paper. And the only way you get there is, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, and eventually it comes around. So, yeah, so yeah, that comparison of natural ability and working at it, that's really what kind of pushed me down the road and eventually got that first book.
Well, I want to, speaking of being thick-headed and not recognizing things, you gave me the perfect segue to jump into the publishing industry, but I can't help myself for a minute, Tim. I want to go back to this Kubert School thing real quick because
Sure, sure.
I think it's something that is just a really interesting like little snippet of your career. And for people who are unfamiliar with Joe Kubert and the Kubert School, Joe Kubert, fascinating, amazing cartoonist who worked on The Shadow and War Comics, and I mean he worked until his dying day in his mid 80s, I believe. But he created this cartooning school in New Jersey that still to this day is like the creme de la creme of sequential artwork. And you were working there for it seems like kind of two academic seasons. And I was just curious, like what skills were you bringing to the table for the Kubert School, and what was your time like there?
So, so uh, Joe Kubert had a few sons. Two of them were close to my age. One was, I think, a half a year older than me, and the other guy was, a year younger than me. And this is Adam and Andy Kubert. And everybody who's listening, you can pause here and go look them up and go see what they're doing. Anyway, they didn't fall far from the apples didn't fall far from the tree. And I met those guys. They used to offer a Saturday class when the school very first opened. Come to learn how to draw Spider-Man. No, come to learn to draw Superman. On a Saturday. And me and the guy who I just told you who lived next door, he went to art school with me, and we learned to draw together. We went and took the course, and we were, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, and then those guys were there, and at 12, 13, and 14, their dads letting them kind of be, instructors. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And so years later, you go to Joe's school because they had the best art supply store. And so I got out of art school, and Adam and Andy knew me, and I remained friends with their dad. So when I was trying to get my career off the ground, he knew what I was doing, and he knew the struggle that was there. And they just happened to need an instructor. People come and go, and I was at that part of my career when you first start, you have a full-time job, and you just carve out some time at the night to keep your thing going. Then, if you can just get it off the ground, you do your art as much as you can, and then you still got to get that part-time job to just make the ends meet. And that's where I was in my career, where I was getting some work, but it wasn't really paying the bills. And he was offering 2 days a week of work and come in and teach. And I wasn't, I didn't have a ton of experience. Like I said, I was still in my 20s. I had a couple of years of uh, hitting the streets. And I don't even know how many books I had done at the time, but not very many, a couple, three, five. And he's, and to Joe's credit, he goes, yeah, he goes, I know, you could use the work. He goes, you got some skills. You're going to teach, we're going to teach illustration classes. I think I did a color class and I did an illustration class. And I'm going, oh, I'm barely out of school. What do you mean? I'm the teacher. And he goes, nah, and again, Joe was totally hands off. He always let you do your own thing. And then he would wait and hear, if he heard negative feedback, he'd come and straighten you out. And he was somebody who could straighten you out. He was an intimidating guy. And he just let me do my thing. So all I did was take the lessons that really hit home for me when I was in art school, put my little twist on it, but I was lifting the courses, the exact courses that I had just finished at school a couple of years early, and brought them in to be utilized there using the same theories behind them. And again, art theory is art theory. It's kind of universal. So it wasn't that I was taking, somebody's copywritten material and representing it. But I think the appeal to the guys, I was teaching guys who were older than me. I think the appeal that, when I first came in, they were, everybody's like, who's the punk, who's showing up. And then I think what hit home was, it's like, well, look, here's my art. This is what I'm doing. These are this is the pitfalls I'm running into. This is, this terrible thing happened. And, this is really hard. And, so they got a reality check of, oh, we're going to be you in just, 2 more years. You're us. So I think that was the part and then a lot of the classes then would devolve into that conversation. Well, what happened with this? And, and they were always very interested in, when you'd show up the next week, oh, what happened after da happened? And so I really enjoyed teaching, but I always knew I was there at the wrong time. And so, like you said, I did it for a couple of years. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It's nice. I see a couple of guys when I'm out traveling at the shows, because they're now grown-ups and they're relatively famous now too. And we see each other and tell old war stories. But I knew I wasn't going to stay long, because I wanted to be more experienced to be standing in front of people. Like, I'm very busy now, but being the age I am now, I would like to. I feel like I have more to offer, to stand up in front of a group of people and teach.
Yeah, I mean, I think in education, the whole goal is to make things relevant. And, like if the skill you can offer is like, I can show you what the roadmap looks like 2 or 3 years down the road, that's relevance. That's
Yeah.
important. Um, thanks for
Yeah,
the insight.
yeah, but so even before that, so the guy who was my instructor back at the vocational school, when I first got out of art school and I started hitting it, man, it was so bad. And he would call me up, and I would he'd like, how's it going? I was like, oh man, I don't know. I don't know how long I can last, all that stuff. And he goes, you need to come into my class. These, he used to call them, he used to call all the kids Mickey Mouse. Now they're all a bunch of Mickey Mouse. He goes, you got to come in and come talk to my class. And I was like, "Oh, you don't want me to come and talk to your class?" And I said, everything's going terrible. And he goes, no, that's exactly why I want you to come. And so that was the first part of my career, telling everybody how bad things are. And but you're right. There is wisdom in there. And then if you do step out and do it and you start to hit some pitfalls and it goes a little bit rough, you go, well, I heard already that this is what's supposed to happen, rather than, oh, it's only me and I suck and all that stuff.
Yeah, everybody's got to start somewhere. But let's get back to I'll de-knuckle my head and we'll go back to
Okay.
you kind of making your way into publishing. I know that you had a relationship with Scholastic before the Goosebumps contract really kicked
Yes.
in, right? What was once you started kind of getting those jobs in, how how did you find that work? Was it enjoyable? Like what was it like kind of kicking your career off in publishing?
So just before I did start working with Scholastic, so I got out of art school and I spent between probably I the teacher I told you who was the illustrator who did books. One of the things he did when I graduated, he goes, "I'm here. I'm going to do this for you." He goes, "What you're going to do is you're going to come with me." He goes, "I'm going into New York to meet with my art director, and I'm going to deliver a job." He goes, "I want you to come with me, and I want you to come and just hang out." He goes, "You're not getting a job. It's not an interview. It's none of that stuff." He goes, "I want you to bring your art, but I want you to watch me interact with an art director and see how we do our thing, and I'll be delivering a job, and you can just get a feel of what it's like." So we go do that day, and the art director was a real nice guy. He reviewed my stuff, and he goes, "Okay, I'm going to just tell you the truth." He went through all the stuff, and he goes, "This one piece, this one's what you want to be gearing towards." He goes, "Your portfolio right now looks like you're a kid who just got out of school." He goes, "I can't hire a kid who just got out of school." He goes, "I want you to go home and I want you to rebuild this portfolio so that it looks like, if you want to do book covers, I want everything in your portfolio to look like a book cover. And do it the right dimensions, leave the space for the type, all of it. Think it all the way through." He goes, "I don't care what do whatever subject matter you want, but I need these things to look like actual book covers." So I went home and kept the one piece, and then took everything out and put it in the closet, and it was like, "Ooh, this is going to be this is a long haul." Because again, like I said, got to work all day and make a couple of bucks, and then I'd mostly do it at night. And it took a couple of years to get that portfolio together. And then once we got that portfolio together, me and my ex-wife, uh, we would ride into the city together, and everything was physical back then. You couldn't. There was no way to send anybody anything. So they had you would carry your art in a giant portfolio case. All my paintings were 20 inches by 30 inches, and you would go to the book publishers and they would have drop-off days, and you would leave your case right there, and they would look at them in the afternoon, and then you could pick them back up and then go take it to the next one. So the routine was, go drive into the city, find a publisher, drop your case off, go back home, go to work, get up the next morning, go back to the city, pick up the case from the place you just were, take it to another place, get back in your car, go back home. So just to get your work cycled around. And yeah, so it took a couple of years to get the portfolio together, and then it took probably another 6 months to a year before we landed the very first job. And that was key, because you need somebody to take a chance. And it's much easier to go to another guy after you've said, "Hey, I already am published." And yeah, so Donald A. Walheim, an 80-year-old sci-fi guy. Uh, uh, Again, another guy you can all look up, Donald A. Walheim, uh, Daw Books, DAW, Donald A. Walheim, uh, did science fiction books, and my stuff was science fiction and fantasy when that was my niche. And yeah, he I got my first. I got another cover first, but I got a cover from him second, and I finished his first. So he gets credit for being the first one I got finished, but he was actually the second book I ever got. Anyway, that's just a twitch that I always say. And he was he was a hard nosed guy, but it was great. So now I ended up getting a couple jobs from him. So now I have two or three that I can go around with and try and get the additional jobs. So my ex-wife was real instrumental in this. She's a salesperson, and she could sell me. I All I could see with my artwork, and I still do today, is I can only see what's wrong, not what's right. And so she was very good about getting people, and she could hype me up. Anyway, we met this art director, and he was real good to us. And when we got done uh, one of the jobs, he goes, "Look, you guys really need to get a rep. You need, the people who are doing this right. You need a representative who has all the connections, who knows all of us." And he gave us a name, and I went down and met the guy. And from that point on, that's where the game changed, because he had all the connections. He could get the jobs. I didn't have to be running back and forth to the city. I just had to sit home and paint. That was, all of a sudden, that was the job. And that's where it really started to get going. And he was the one who got us into Scholastic.
And just in regards to the way in which you were painting, I mean, you were drawing, painting, and then airbrushing by the time you were doing Goosebumps. Was that process something that you had been refining the whole way, or were you kind of
Yes,
evolving your process as
yes,
well?
100%. So when you're in art school, they make you do everything. You're going to do oil painting, you're going to do watercolor, you're going to do, pen and ink, all of it. You're just going to, they're exposing you to everything. And then when you get out, that's when you kind of go, all right, what do I do? And I had airbrush. I had used an airbrush a bunch of times. I had painted motorcycle tanks and on cars because people would let me. And I got used to using the tool. And even in art school, every once in a while, I go, okay, I know that this project is, this is a color theory thing, but if I just bring in the art airbrush a little bit here, it could be cool. And I got used to just using it not as the primary tool, but just as a secondary, smooth out the background or put a cool highlight someplace. And that was the evolution of what I was doing. So it's acrylic paint, it was sable brush, and it was the airbrush. But sable brush was 80% of it, and the airbrush was 20% of it.
Oh, interesting. It was like a finishing tool, essentially.
Yes, yeah. I just use it to, like if you were doing a rendering of a face and there was too many brush strokes in there, get in there with the airbrush and just glaze over that and get that skin to look nice and smooth.
So awesome. And so one of the things that and I'm going to apologize for jumping forward, but you get goosebumps. Like congratulations, Tim, right? Like that's pretty cool. And from what I understand, you get welcome to Dead House. Like they give you the full transcript essentially for that. And you're able to start working, but also your format changes. Instead of doing 20 by 30s, you start doing 20 by 20s, which ironically are very much like record albums. Right?
Right?
So tell me about kind of that problem solving process of getting that first Goosebumps book and being like, all right, I got to do something that's horror for kids.
it and I had no experience of horror. That wasn't. I had done fantasy. Did some sci-fi, and not that it was out of the realm of what I did, but I wasn't the scary guy, and I wasn't the guy who I wasn't the kid who liked scary stuff. I was the kid who called his mom and said the movie's too scary. Come and get me. So again, I'm not the guy who you think should have got that gig. And but the thing about it, and what I discovered early on quickly through reading, getting through our first book and then getting to the other ones was RL wrote with a sense of humor. And once you realize, oh, that's what we're doing here. Yeah, we're scaring you, but there's also going to be a lightness to it, and we're going to fool around a little bit when we can. And once I got that idea in my head, then it really started to fall into place.
Did you have that theory for this first project? Like,
No, 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 no. And actually, if you read Welcome to Dead House, it's pretty, that one's probably one of the darkest stories. And even RL himself talks about it going, he was used to writing for the kids who were older. And so this was his first one at it. And, he's often talked about it. He goes, yeah, I started out a little bit rough on him. So, yeah, then as we moved past that, then it started to lighten up a little. And the one that really got me was, and I forget the numbers of the books, but it's one of the early ones, and it's called Say Cheese and Die. And as soon as I heard, like I laughed when I read the title of the cover.
yeah, I got it here for reference, so I can,
Perfect. Well, there you go. There you go. And and it was like, you couldn't help but laugh at the title. And then I went, all right, I get it. I get it. So, and even on that cover, it's kind of humorous. It's a family of skeletons barbecuing. And yeah, it's scary, but not really.
It's number 4, FYI.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. And it's one of those things where, like, as a kid, you look at these things and, like, for whatever reason, they're so appealing. I mean, as like a 7 or 8 year old, you're like in the bookstore and you're like, this is really interesting stuff. And you associate it so much with horror. And then you get older and you kind of look at these things and how tongue in cheek and just playful they are just really comes out. And it's just this beautiful transition from like a childhood mentality to adulthood mentality, that I always appreciated. In regards to the way in which these worked, it was, just for listeners out there, like, computers weren't that big a thing, right? Like,
yeah, not no such thing as a computer in your house. Are you kidding me? Unless your dad was in the computer business, no, there was no such thing.
so you were, if I had read this correctly, one of the things that's kind of unique about the contract is that they paid you a little bit more so they could keep the artwork as well, right?
Correct. That came later on. Actually, at first they paid me less. There was super super low expectations that Goosebumps was going to work at all, and because it had never been tried, and they just went, listen, Tim, if you help us out on this, it's going to be a couple $100 less than usual. But I read the manuscript and I went, oh, this actually seems pretty cool, and I've never done this, so heck yeah. A job in the hand, of course, I'll take that as compared to no job. And so then as it started to take off and they knew we were going to be doing this for a while, yeah, they came back and said, listen, this is starting to actually turn into something. So we're going to give you a raise, and then we're going to give you another raise to please let us keep the artwork. Because back then, yeah, again, no digital files. Our paintings were photographed by special photographers. We all knew the same people, all us artists, who could make your art look flat, no reflections, and it would be camera ready for production for the book publishers. So yeah, and that's a big pain in the neck for them, and a big cost. So they didn't want to also have to call me every time they needed another shot of Slappy and have to get the painting delivered. And so they were like, look, just let us. And at the time, I was like, sure, you're going to pay me more. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Now I wish I knew now what I knew then. I would have liked to, maybe renegotiated something and been able to have them, because the very first Goosebumps Welcome to Dead House was in 1992, 33 years ago. And so the last time that when I finished the painting, they used to pack them into uh, cardboard and send them over to Federal Express. That's the last time I saw it. I've seen plenty of reproductions of it, but I haven't seen any of that original art since the day I pack them up and ship them back in. So, yeah, I'd like to see them again.
Yeah, I think this is our public call to Scholastic that we need the Tim Jacobus retrospective, art show at MoMA. Like, let's get
Yeah,
that
there
going.
you go. There you go. That would be fun. I actually, I'll just keep this part brief. I actually reached out to him and said, can we, I know you don't need them now. You got digital copies of everything. Can we work something out? And that was the second offer was, well, even if you don't want to sell them back, and I don't even know if I could afford to buy them back, but can we, like, can I take them out for a tour? Bring them out, travel around one time, bring them with me, and I'll bring them back and you can put them back in the closet again. So we'll see. But we'll see if we can get some traction on that.
I'll keep my fingers. We got to come up with the right hashtag to
Yeah,
popularize
I
that,
think you're
right?
right. I think you're right.
So one of the things that I understand about the process between you and R.L. Stein is that like you guys, a lot of people think it's this like budding collaboration, but at the time, like you guys didn't know each other at all,
No.
like and it starts off with like here's the full manuscript, and then it turns into here's a couple paragraphs, and then it turns into like here's a sentence. Can you talk a little bit about that collaboration of like your sort of daydreaming approach as you're getting like minimal information?
Yeah. So this is a subject that comes up a lot, and you're right. You would think like just naturally that illustrators and authors all work together side by side, and RL would call up while he's smoking his pipe and give me the essence of the story behind it, and it's just he's doing his thing and he works with editors. I'm doing my thing and I work with art directors, and then the art directors and the editors talk. And that wasn't just unique at Scholastic or unique to RL and I. That's the way it is at every place. I never met any of the authors that I worked with until, usually by accident. Um, but that's I know it's done on purpose, and it's a way to keep things in control, because maybe the author does have an idea, and the book people, the editors and the art directors, that's not the direction they want to go. That's their business, that's their specialty, that's what they're really good at. So authors are good at writing, but maybe they're not so good at designing covers. So they like to keep control over that part. And then as the artist, I get hired to do my thing. And again, uh, being an illustrator is different than being a fine artist. My job is to read your mind and or get the essence of what you're doing. This is all about your ideas. I'll add my flair to it, and I'll add my flavor, but we're trying to we're trying to convey as best as I can what you want.
Interesting. There's so many things I want to ask you, but I'm going to try to hone it in on one, which is, obviously you had a kind of a different creative process for each one. And you've talked about, for Say Cheese and Die, for example, the fact that, you've got this family of skeletons and it's something where you take a picture and you see the future of something and you're like, oh, that would be cool. And RL gets it and it's like, oh, I have to write something new for the book. And, those kind of things pop up. And you've also talked pretty extensively about the fact that like you love low angles and you love forced perspective. There's almost never a straight line in any Tim Jacobus piece, right?
Can't have that. Can't have that. That might be easier, but we can't do that.
Yeah, the airbrush will hate it, right? But the one I'm curious about, and every Goosebumps fan has their sort of specific one, but I was kind of curious about Attack of the Mutant, which
Nice.
is just with your history working at the Kubert School and being more of a fantasy science fiction guy as opposed to a horror guy. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of doing the drawing for that one about a kid who's obsessed with the superhero and then kind of gets pulled into a comic book?
Well, it was great that we spent enough time talking about the Kubert School, because that's right where I went. So this thing came up and they're going, yeah, it's a superhero and it's very, he's very much like Batman. And I'm going, I know what I'm doing. I went down and I hung out and I talked to Adam and Andy. And, I went back and I went and looked at some of their, again, you would today, all I would do is just Google them and look at some of their artwork and go, oh, yeah, I see what you're doing. Couldn't do that. So I actually went down to see him and said, hey, let me, break out some of your stuff. Let me see what you guys are doing. Plus, I had been used to being around the school and seeing, what good comic book art looks like. And again, you just start to go, all right, yeah, what I need to do is which I was already doing, was that forced perspective, make sure that, when he's moving along, that one fist is way out in front and looks really giant. And, and again, he shouldn't be touching the ground at all. He should be almost like he's flying. And, yeah, did again, steal, steal, steal. I'm just using, if you want that thing to be, uh, so I use the analogy for what I do as kind of like being a chef. There's just ingredients, but you got to put them all together. But you're making your own meal out of it. But and in that one, the ingredient was I needed that comic book field. So go to the experts. Don't why would I think I could reinvent the concept of a good comic book character? Go to the guys who are the experts and see what they're doing. And again, don't steal from them, but see what is it? What's the secret sauce that you can bring into it? So yeah, I went right there. I went right to them.
Not many people have that resource in the backyard of their home, right?
At the time, for sure. And it's funny, I hadn't seen either one of them in years. And last year at two separate comic conventions, we ran into each other, and it was so great to see him. And it's funny, it's one of the cool things, one of the few cool things about getting older is when you run into old friends like that, you spend, the first 15 minutes, rehash it, doing the elevator pitch of what happened over the last 25 years. And then once you reach the end of that, you finish that story, then you're right back to where you were the last time you were together, and you start making fun of each other. And, it's all great. It's all great.
Well, that's awesome. Well, speaking of making fun of each other, I have to, there's once again, Tim, I could talk to you all day, but I want to ask one very specific question, which is, you and RL, once again, started off not really knowing each other, and then, kind of met by accident. And then, you catch up at different conventions. And from what I understand, you guys have a pretty good relationship now. But one time the two of you went to Disneyland.
Heck yeah. Yeah, they were doing the they were opening this Goosebumps. I don't want to call it a ride because that's not what it was. It was a thing that you went through, and it was a little bit of a haunted house event, and there was some acting out of characters. But at the time, the thing that was blowing people's minds, and I had never seen it before, was they set up a camera and they had a green screen, and nobody knew what a green screen was. And so you and or your family would get in front of the camera, and they do the green screen, and then they would superimpose you onto a Goosebumps cover, and you would get that as you were leaving the thing. And this was sorcery. Yeah, this was witchcraft. And but yeah, that was the big thrill of that. So when they were doing the opening of that, they decided that RL was going to be the master of ceremonies for the day. And they had him go into the parade, the one that comes down, the main street and the Magic Castle, and he's in the car with, convertible with Mickey and Minnie. And yeah, so he brought me, and it was him and his family, and his son Matt was he had to be he wasn't high school age yet. He was probably in middle school. And um, so yeah, got a chance to hang out with his family, and they and in class they all love teasing each other, him and his family. So he didn't. I'm sure nobody really wants to be sitting in the car coming down the street. It's a little much. Being the center of attention like that, and uh, so the car's coming down the street, and we're all on the side there. And there was a good group of us. There was, a dozen of his family, and me, and my wife, my ex-wife, and so then Matt starts whispering to everybody. He goes, "Okay, when he gets here, just when it gets close, everybody holler out, who's R.L. Stein?" So, and there he is coming along, and then at the last minute, everybody hollers it out, and he just shakes his head like, "You guys you're terrible. You're terrible."
That's a, did you two get your superimposed Goosebumps photo together?
I definitely got one. Yeah, I definitely have one. I didn't get one with him, but I got one. I know I had it for a while. I don't have it anymore. I wish I hung on to it. But yeah, that was a cool thing.
That's so awesome. There's a million different angles we could go, but you've had a really successful career in motion graphics. I for since sort of like leaving the Goosebumps properties. I shouldn't say that. You've never left them. They're a part of you forever, Tim.
Yeah,
But
but there was a time where in my head I was done. So Goosebumps came to an end, and even Scholastic and RL, and like it stopped for a short period of time, and then when they restarted it, they a couple of, yeah, I think that was maybe a 2-year hiatus, and then they started it back up again. They replaced me with another illustrator. So at that time, then in my head, okay, my time is up, and I'm doing this new thing. And so yeah, I fully said, yeah, that was something I used to do, and I used to be the Goosebumps illustrator, but there's a new guy, and he's it now. So yeah, I had kind of said, yeah, I washed my hands of it, and I was doing something else.
and how did you get pulled into the kind of motion graphics world?
There's a guy here locally, and just before so when Goosebumps was over, I was doing a couple of other illustrated properties, and I got a chance to do some Teletubby work. So yeah, what a transition going from Goosebumps to Teletubbies.
There are
But
different forms of terror,
yeah,
you know.
they 100%, and Teletubbies scare me way more than the Goosebumps did. So I needed reference material, and a lot of what was supplied to me, and this was a Scholastic property. What was supplied to me was a lot of VHS tapes. And there was a guy who was local. Who I went to the local printer, and I said, "Man, I need stills lifted off these VHS so I can figure out what these characters. Like I can't figure out how to draw these characters. I need stills." And so this guy did this, and I went there, introduced myself. He pulled the stills. He had the technology to do it. And so I met the guy, and I was like, "Oh, what do you guys do here?" And started to see some of the stuff they were working on. And this was real rudimentary. To call it animation would have been rough back then, but but it was moving, and my stuff wasn't moving. So again, a couple, maybe a year or so, 2 years goes by, and now I'm kind of done with books altogether. I need something a little bit more consistent. And by then I had, lived alone in the studio for 20 plus years, and was going, let's do something different. And that the guy knew I was an illustrator. He actually reached out to me and said, "Oh, we know each other." He goes, "I got a couple of weeks worth of work. And why don't you come here and see what we're doing? We could use your help. And we know you're really good in Photoshop, and that's what we need right now. So started to work with him, and the 2 weeks turned into 4, turned into 6. I left a couple times, like, okay, that's it, and then I'd get called back in 2 months, and again, and now, I'm there. I don't know how many years. We both disagree how many years I've been there. It's been that long, but yeah, we started with. I can't remember the program we started with, but the one that got us really going was using Flash. Flash was big for a lot of years. An excellent tool, very finicky. And then Flash became Storyline. Storyline is the current tool, authoring tool, and way more stable, and gives you the ability to do some medium range illustrations, but also gives you the ability to publish stuff, post it, and get people's access to it. And all the courses have tracking in them, so once we put them up, your people can come from anywhere in the country, sign in, take the course. It's all tracked, and it goes to your name. And there's a lot more smarter people on that back end side than me. But yeah, it was a great, and it was teamwork. It wasn't something that I just had to do by myself. And you got used to working with writers up front, and working with other illustrators at the same time on the same projects, where, okay, you do this, I'll do this, and let's get this to go together.
Yeah, and it's like, so you've done it for a lot of cool clients too. Like you worked for Aramark and Tiffany and Simons
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Honeywell. Like all these really interesting, huge Fortune 500 companies are coming to the Goosebumps dude to like
Yeah,
do
well, they
these
don't
like
know.
learning
Oh,
management.
that's funny, because I never say I'm the Goosebumps dude. We went. I'm no lie. We went. Boy, it was only this year where we were on a call, and the guy that owns the company who I work with, that couldn't help himself. And he goes, I know. He goes, Tim hates this when I bring it up here, but he's the goosebump. And again, it was fun because all the clients were all your age. So, it wasn't like if the clients were my age, they'd go, I don't, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, man, I might have bought one for my kid, but anyway, they were the right age, and it did make an impression.
Yeah.
So
All of us on our late 30s are pretty stoked.
that's 100%.
Well, Tim, I want to be mindful of your time. I got two more questions for you.
Sure.
One, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, but like you're a very charitable individual, just in general. I mean, you volunteered your time to chat with me, which I greatly appreciate. But in the middle of COVID, you also got a project off the ground where you decided to use your art studio to be a vehicle to raise money for your local food bank, which it just warms my heart. I just think is so phenomenal. And I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about sort of that project.
Yeah, that again, so COVID hits, and we all have the same reaction, like, oh man, what's going to happen? And you kind of batten down the hatches and go, well, is there going to be any work at all? And we were lucky enough that, some people disappeared, but new people showed up, and there wasn't a huge interruption in what we were doing. There was still illustration work. Again, it kind of kept working for me. But then you're sitting there on that side of it going, well, oh, good for me. It's all going good for me. But then you start watching TV, and it really struck me. It was a news report, and they're showing the long lines of people at it wasn't a local food bank. It was a food bank in maybe California. And the common phrasing that was coming out of the people who were being interviewed was, I've never had to do this before. I've taken care of myself all along, but I need some help right now. And I went, I'm comfortable. Maybe there's something I could do. And I had been kind of messing around with, all right, well, I should, put out the Goosebumps prints, but there's an investment to that. And it's like, do I really want to get, do I want this to be my thing? But that was the thing I needed. I needed another reason to do it, to go, no, you have to do this. And it was also, I live with my son and he's 25, and it's also one of those, I taught him all that stuff when he was little. Like he knows how to brush his teeth, he knows how to comb his hair. He's a very good kid. But I also wanted to go, all right, here's a good life lesson that you can, you watch me do it, then hopefully this will reflect on you. And in a very short period of time, it got busy enough to where I needed his help. So we're still a team on this thing, and he helps put the orders together every day. And we charge $28 for a big poster and $22 for a small one, and then $10 out of that every sale gets carved out of there, and we buy food with it. And there's no middleman. I go right on the line to Walmart, and Walmart brings the food to the house. And at the beginning, it was 2 bags. We brought 2 bags down the street to the food bank, and they were very nice. And then the next week it was 4. And then if you take a look at my website, we fill the back of the pickup truck every month now. And they know us very well down there. And for the longest time, because all the boxes say Walmart on it, they thought I was somehow associated with Walmart. And so they always called me the Walmart guy. But now they know I'm the Goosebumps guy. So yeah, it's working a little better now.
Well, I think it's amazing, and I think the whole charity starts at home thing is a very real, very important thing. And
And it's
for,
one of those things where you don't, so at first I'm going, okay, this is good. And I was fixating on, you know, where do we go to get good prints? How do I ship them? We don't want stuff to get lost. I was I was on the wrong side. I was spending too much time focusing on the wrong side of it. And it's not until you start then going over to the food bank and seeing the people and go and you see the same people and you go, oh yeah, they this is tough. And you have to come here, you have to wait your turn, and the parking lot's full. It's not like it's a these aren't invisible people. They're there, and it really hits home. And it's a great thing that there is a place for them to go. And the fact that it's you guys, it's the outsiders who are perpetuating this, like is making it run. I could only dig into my pocket so many times before I can't do that anymore. But it's you guys now, and I'm just, we're doing the conduit thing, so it's
yeah,
working very nice.
and for me, it's just really important, just as a fan of the Goosebumps books and of your work, that it's nice to pay back. It's like
Yes,
the $4
yes,
book I bought gave me so much enjoyment, way more than the $4. I got to pay that interest back and make sure that it benefits somebody else.
yes, yeah. And again, you do it at first because you want to do something good, and then it's the cliche, and then it ends up I'm getting more out of it than anybody else is. So now I have to, then you almost it's it's this perpetual motion thing. So then you start enjoying it too much, and then you figure I got to do something else to make it harder so I don't enjoy it so much. Anyway,
Hey, it's good. Well, speaking of enjoyment, I got just wrapping this up.
yeah, take your time. Take your time.
I've had the privilege of looking at your resume, which is on your website, and I got to tell you, as somebody who's been involved in a lot of hiring processes, you're pretty honest about your skills and competencies, which is just super fun. Like
I haven't read it in a while, so yeah.
well, in case you're wondering, he takes a lot of pride in his Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator and his art direction skills. Animation and storyline could use a little work. Time management too. But the one skill that you have, or I shouldn't say skill, the one thing you have listed under your interests is yoga. And I'm really curious about your experience with yoga, because that's not the thing that I'd expect to see from, grade A illustrator.
It came later in life. I started when I was over 50, and uh, it started out as it was something that my ex-wife did, and you do it as a supportive thing. And I didn't go to any classes. It was just like, good for you. You go do your thing. I didn't really realize that it was, again, you learn it all as you get into it. I always thought it was, oh, that's just a girls, women's thing. And for whatever reason, I ended up sitting in on a class, and uh, there was an older guy there. And I mean older. I was in my 50s. This guy easily in his 70s. And and looked old. But when he got in there and started doing his thing, I'm going, look, like he was so limber. And I just went, oh, that's really cool. And then when you start taking the classes, you don't, again, misconceptions is it's all, ohm and find your inner peace and all. They're working you. This is, the sweat will be pouring off of you, and you're going to grunt and you're going to groan, and I got addicted very quickly to it. I did it very steadily for maybe 5 years. I got away from it for a little while, but I just recently started back up again. And I'm a very early riser. I get up at 4 a.m. every day. And that's the first thing I do is I do some yoga, and then I do classic, sit-ups, push-ups, and squats at the end. But the yoga comes first to wake up the old rickety parts.
That's amazing. Well, I hope I look as good as you do once
Oh
I hit
well, yeah.
my,
You better. I see you're wearing glasses. You better go see your optometrist, because this you don't want to aspire to this.
maybe that's my issue is I need a prescription upgrade. How do you feel that those yoga procedures though have influenced your creative side? Like, has that changed?
Um, I'll be very honest. I haven't noticed any of it being. I'm not that deep into it, so from a spiritual side, not that much. But when you're not sitting in aches and pains, you're then clear, you're more able to have clear thoughts, and your whole process then becomes way easier when that's what you're thinking about, not that, oh, my back hurts, and the longer I'm sitting here my back hurts more. That's the real beauty of it. Is it this is this is kind of an endurance test. This whole being an illustrator, I'm only making money when I'm sitting in this chair. The minute I'm even walking over to go get a cup of coffee, you're not making money. So the longer you sit, the more profitable it is. But again, it's beating you up. You don't realize it. You don't realize it for a long period of time. And then just getting old is, that beats you up too. Time is the ultimate winner every time. So no. So again, the short answer is that yoga just keeps you feeling better and more limber. And the less you think about that and the more you can concentrate on your other stuff, the better
I,
it is.
I think that's awesome. Well, on this show, Tim, I like to always offer just a moment if there's anything that we haven't talked about or any ideas that you kind of want to put out there, anything on your mind today?
Well, the one thing I want to say is, so like I said, there was a time where I stopped saying or stopped in my head thinking I was the Goosebumps artist. And in recent years, the nostalgia thing has really started to kick in. And as I alluded to earlier, I get the opportunity to go to a lot of comic book conventions and meet fans. And the first time I met you guys, you were only 10 and 11 years old, and you couldn't even look me in the eye when you told me you liked Slappy. And now you're grown-ups, and we're having really great conversations about Goosebumps and what it meant to you back then and what it still means to you now. And it's so amazing that there's still interest. Like there were plenty of things you did when you were 11 that aren't cool anymore, but people are still thinking that this is cool. And I just it's not lost on me. I love every minute of it, and it is, without being too corny, it's really a blessing.
It's awesome, and I just appreciate how much you just as a person have completely owned that. Like I think that there's a lot of people who are like, "Oh, it's that work I did when I was 28. Like I can't believe people won't shut up about it." And like, you still came back, and when they did the movie, you did artwork for that, and you were
Heck
game
yeah.
for those things.
Yeah, yes, listen, pick your favorite band. Yeah, when it gets to be time for the encore, they're playing that song that they played 10,000 times because that's what everybody paid to come and see. And what's nice though now is I get an opportunity. I'm still illustrating regularly. Most of what I'm doing, people want it to look like Goosebumps. So I'm still doing that style of art, but I'm doing new stuff, and I'm still being creative, and new stuff is still happening. We talk about the old stuff. People want to talk about that more, but the new stuff is still happening. And as long as and I am still thrilled every time I do a new illustration. It's still fun. It's still exciting. I'm as, at the beginning, I go, I don't know what's going to happen. I kind of know, but I don't really know. And then there's always that little thing that happens on every illustration where there's a little bit of something that you didn't really plan on. It's kind of an accident. It's not an accident. It just happens. And there's a little bit of magic in there. And you go, oh, that's cool. All right. All right. This one came out good. On to the next one.
Well, that's awesome, and we're happy to have you, and we're just so
Oh,
honored
thank
that
you.
you're
Yep.
enthusiastic about it too. Tim, for anybody who's interested in learning more about your work or maybe reaching out for a commission, what are the best ways to get a hold of you?
So it's jacobusstudios.com is the best place. If you the easiest place to go is go to Instagram because that's where I'll be post. I post old images to promote cons that are coming up, and then anytime there's a new piece of art that's being released, it shows up there, and that's just Instagram. It's just Tim Jacobus.
It's awesome, and I gotta just do a quick shout out, which is you did a really cool piece honoring Joe Dante's work, the
Oh,
director of
thanks.
Gremlins.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, I knew who he was and I knew of his work, but there was somebody else who actually did this little scribble on a piece of paper, and he goes, "Yeah, what about can we put everything? Because I'm not sure. What do you want me to do? Pick one thing? Are we doing like a portrait of the guy?" And he's like, "No, no, no." And he roughed the thing out. I wish I had that. I should post his scribbles right next to it. And yeah, that was fun. Yeah, that was a real fun piece.
It's amazing. And the other thing I'll put out there too is that it's still in print right now. Dynamite has done an Art of Goosebumps book, which is a really
Yes.
great project that shows a lot of your process and just the sort of history of your experience with Goosebumps, which is amazing.
Yeah, the first printing sold out so fast, and then it took a long period of time to get the second printing back. It's printed overseas, but it just came in the last couple of months. There's books everywhere, so that's finally easy to find again, and you can get them from me. I have 100 copies in the back. I have 90 copies in the back, and you can order them, and I sign them. So yeah, check out that book because it's beautiful. It's one of the few places where you can see all the Goosebumps art in between two sets of plates.
Well, awesome. Well, Tim, this has been an absolute pleasure. I really thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate you having me. It really was a good time.
I really hope you enjoyed that conversation with Tim. What an absolute treasure. What a just kind soul. I really want to thank him for making the time and just sharing his story. I think it's really important to remember that, like, grinding things out, taking chances, just sort of devoting yourself to the art form that you're passionate about 90% of the time is going to pay off and surprise you in new ways. He had no idea he was going to be the horror artist, and look at him now, doing amazing stuff still 30 years on with airbrushes and paints and now a little bit of digital flair. So again, Tim, thanks so much for being on the show. And I want to just reiterate for listeners out there that if you are interested in supporting Tim and his work, but also making sure that your money is going to a good cause, Jacobus Studios you can find online, and he is selling his prints and donating money to food banks. And as somebody who has a number of his prints hanging in my home, and has been in contact with him. I can verify that your money is going to a good place, and that a good portion of what you're spending is helping feed people in his local community, which I applaud. I applaud. I applaud. Moving ahead, though, we've got some pretty cool stuff. On May 22nd, our next episode, we're going to have Andrew and Kristen Looney on the show. They are the owners of Looney Labs, which is a game development company based in College Park, Maryland. They're the creators of the Flux card game, Flux the board game, Lunacy, Just Desserts, and Chrononauts, and a variety of other card games that you may or may not have played, but I will put money on it that if you've ever been in a card store or a gaming store, you've seen their stuff. They do just amazing work, but more important than them being game designers, they come from a fascinating background of computer science and working for NASA. So going from NASA, and you'll hear interesting stories about Rubik's Cubes, to all of a sudden designing these amazing games and creating a company that just has so much heart behind it. So if you're interested in learning about game design or just what is it like at NASA, tune in on May 22nd to the Meditations with Ryan Zlomek podcast, and you are in for a treat. Equally, if you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, and recommend the show to other people. I have a huge back catalog with amazing interviews from voice actors, entrepreneurs, coaches, and just amazing community builders that I've been so lucky to connect with. New episodes come out every other Wednesday. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The World of Ryan Zlomek, and you can email me, you can reach out. Don't be a stranger. Please share the good word about the podcast and the amazing things that you've learned from it. But without further ado, we're going to sign off until the next episode. So remember, make space for conversation, because you just might learn something.